History books once made the human story look cleaner than it really was. Humans arrived here. Civilization started there. Modern thinking belonged to us. And the past moved forward in a simple line. But the deeper archaeologists looked, the more that simple story began to crack. A footprint in New Mexico. A fossil in Morocco. Paint on a cave wall in Spain. A Viking settlement in Newfoundland. And ancient fish bones in Israel. None of these discoveries were supposed to change everything on their own. But together, they forced one uncomfortable question. How much of human history was never settled? Only incomplete. This is Facts in History 87, where real discoveries, strange evidence, and forgotten details change the way the past looks. Today, 5 discoveries that rewrote human history. Number 5, White Sands footprints. For a long time, one of the biggest questions in archaeology was when humans first reached the Americas. The older story was relatively simple. People crossed into the Americas near the end of the Ice Age, moved south, and eventually spread across the continents. But at White Sands in New Mexico, archaeologists found something that made that timeline much harder to keep simple. Footprints. Not tools, not bones, not a settlement, just footprints pressed into ancient ground. And that is what makes them so powerful. Footprints are direct evidence of presence. Someone was there. Someone walked across that landscape, not as a theory, not as a myth, but as a physical trace left behind in mud that later hardened into history. The most important part is the age. Research connected to the White Sands footprints places human presence there at around 23,000 years ago. That matters because it pushes people in North America much earlier than many older models allowed. If humans were already walking through New Mexico that long ago, then the story of how and when people entered the Americas becomes more complicated. Maybe migration happened earlier, maybe there were multiple movements, maybe the routes were more complex than the older version suggested. The discovery does not answer every question, but it changes the starting point. And sometimes in history, changing the starting point changes the entire map. Number 4. Jebel Irhoud fossils. The next discovery did not just change where humans were, it changed how old our species may be. For decades, many people associated early Homo sapiens with East Africa around 200,000 years ago. That was the simplified version. Then came Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. The fossils found there were not just another set of ancient human remains. They forced scientists to rethink the age and geography of early Homo sapiens. The Jebel Irhoud fossils have been dated to around 315,000 years ago. That is not a small adjustment. That pushes early Homo sapiens much deeper into the past than many older timelines suggested. But the location is just as important as the date. Morocco is in northwest Africa. That means the story of Homo sapiens was not simply one narrow origin point in one part of the continent. It suggests a broader, more complex African story, with early humans developing across wider regions than the simplified model once implied. This matters because human evolution was not a straight line. It was not one perfect moment where modern humans suddenly appeared. It was messy, regional, gradual, and spread across landscapes, climates, and populations. Jebel Irhoud changed the human story because it made our origin older and less simple. It showed that the beginning of Homo sapiens was not a single dot on a map. It was a much wider, older, and more complicated process. Number 3. Neanderthal cave art. For a long time, Neanderthals were treated like the failed version of us. Strong, maybe. Adapted to cold climates, yes. But often imagined as primitive, rough, and mentally inferior to modern humans. That image lasted for generations. Then, cave art began to complicate it. In Spain, some cave paintings have been dated to more than 64,000 years ago. That date matters because it is earlier than the widespread presence of modern humans in that region, which raises a powerful possibility. Neanderthals may have created symbolic art. And if that is true, then the old stereotype collapses. Because symbolic art is not just decoration, it means communication, meaning, shared ideas, a mind capable of turning marks, shapes, and color into something that mattered beyond survival. That does not mean Neanderthals were exactly like modern humans. But it does mean they were not the simple caricature that older history often gave us. They were capable of more than brute survival. They made tools. They adapted. They cared for their dead. They interbred with modern humans. And perhaps they created symbols on cave walls. This discovery matters because it changes what intelligence looks like in the human story. It reminds us that human was never as clean a category as we wanted it to be. The past was not divided neatly into us and them. It was filled with relatives, branches, overlaps, and minds we are still trying to understand. If Neanderthals made art, then the story of creativity is older, stranger, and less exclusively ours than we once believed. If you like history that changes the timeline, follow Facts and History 87 for more real discoveries, strange facts, and forgotten evidence. Because the past is not finished. Sometimes it is just waiting for better proof. Number 2. L'Anse aux Meadows. For many people, the story of Europeans reaching North America begins with Columbus, 1492. That date became one of the most famous in world history. But archaeology tells a more complicated story. At L'Anse aux Meadows, on the northern tip of Newfoundland, researchers found the remains of a Norse settlement. This was not just a legend from a saga, it was a real archaeological site. There were traces of buildings, work areas, ironworking, and evidence of a Norse presence across the Atlantic. The importance is enormous. L'Anse aux Meadows proves that Europeans reached North America centuries before Columbus. Not as a fantasy, not as a rumor, not as a speculative theory, as a physical settlement. This changes the story because it separates myth from evidence. The Norse sagas had long spoken of voyages westward, but without archaeology, stories can be difficult to place in history. L'Anse aux Meadows gave that story a location. It showed that people crossed the North Atlantic using ships, navigation, and survival knowledge strong enough to reach the edge of a continent far from home. But the point is not that Columbus becomes irrelevant. The point is that the older, simplified version was incomplete. European contact with North America did not begin in one single moment. There were earlier crossings, different purposes, different scales, different consequences. L'Anse aux Meadows reminds us that history is not always wrong because people lie. Sometimes it is wrong because the evidence had not yet been found. Number 1. Ancient cooking evidence. The final discovery may look less dramatic than a fossil, a cave painting, or a lost settlement, but it may be one of the most important. Fish remains from Gesher Banat Yaakov in Israel have been interpreted as evidence of cooking around 780,000 years ago. That number is almost difficult to process, because cooking is not just a lifestyle detail. Cooking changes everything. It changes how much energy a body can get from food. It changes digestion. It changes social behavior. It changes time, cooperation, planning, and survival. A cooked meal is not only food, it is technology. It means fire control, resource selection, preparation, possibly sharing, possibly repeated behavior around a place, a group, and a method. For a long time, many people imagined early humans as simple hunters and gatherers, moving through a harsh world with only basic tools. But evidence of very early cooking pushes against that picture. It suggests planning, knowledge, environmental control, and a relationship with fire that was far more sophisticated than a random flame. This is why the discovery matters, because it does not just change what early humans ate, it changes what early humans could do. And if food was being prepared this far back, then one of the most important technologies in human life is older than many people imagine. Cooking helped make humans human, not just biologically, but socially. Around fire, people could gather, share, wait, prepare, return, learn. That is why ancient cooking evidence belongs at number 1, because it does not simply add a detail to the human story, it changes the foundation beneath it. These 5 discoveries all point to the same conclusion: the human story was never simple. It was simplified. White sands changed the timeline of people in the Americas. Jebel Irhoud pushed Homo sapiens deeper into the past. Neanderthal cave art challenged the idea that symbolic thought belonged only to us. Lonzo Meadows rewrote the story of Europeans in North America. And ancient cooking evidence pushed one of humanity's most important technologies far earlier than many expected. None of these discoveries made the past stranger. The past was already strange. They only revealed that our old version was too small. History does not stay fixed when better evidence appears. It bends, it expands, and sometimes it breaks the timeline completely. Which discovery rewrites human history the most? The footprints, the fossils, the cave art, the Viking settlement, or the cooking evidence? Write it below and subscribe to Facts in History 87 for more real history that sounds impossible.